instruments would fall out, the sergeants and the officers would inspect the men, and they may do some exercises and so on and so forth, but that was the first formation of the day. Throughout the day, drums could be used in camp for a variety of things, such as wood call or water call, other signals. If they wanted to assemble the non-commissioned officers, they had a call for that, and so on. On the battlefield, drums were used a little bit more sparingly, but they were nevertheless important. Fifes tended to be used more for helping the wounded, and the younger drummers would help the wounded, but a duty drummer and a drum major would be posted with an officer to relay signals. And one of the most important signals would be the ceasefire. So we're going to play the ceasefire. We'll start with a drum, starting with that, and then the fifes will come in. Ceasefire. The music actually served kind of as your clock. So if you're not on the battlefield, you would assemble at the troop, and you would be off duty at sunset with a tune called the retreat. The same beating and tune is actually used on the battlefield to signal a withdrawal or retreat of the troops. Same, we're going to do 8 bars drum first. Beat the retreat. So those are some of the duty tunes. You would end the day with a tune called the tap 2, which would be basically lights out, and the men were supposed to return to their tents and not be seen until reveille in the morning. But one of the more pleasant parts of military discipline was for us to play favorite airs and marches to help inspire the men and keep the men in step. So we're going to play a medley of what are traditionally American tunes, Chester, followed by Yankee Doodle. Chester is a uniquely American tune. It was actually composed by William Billings in America. Yankee Doodle was a British tune, and lyrics were developed for both sides depending on your loyalty. So the British would sing it to make fun of the Americans, and the Americans took it back and gave it right back to the British. So that one we both could play and may have heard in 18th century armies.
Chester twice, A, B, A, B, Yankee, A, A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A.
Okay. So Yankee is going to be a little bit longer. A, A, B, B, A.
Oh, just A, A, B, B, A?
A, A, B, B. No, it's on you.
So we just do it once,
Oh, what do you want to do?
A,
Okay, we're going to play it once through.
Yankee, A, A, B, B, A.
And Chester twice through.
Chester twice through.
So the first tune will be Chester. We're going to go right into Yankee. I'm sure you'll recognize Yankee Doodle. or what we call the Continental music, because the Army is called the Continental Army, is Stacy Roth, who's acting as drum major and fife major extraordinaire. And the Crown Force music is led by Joseph Siegel from the 23rd Regiment. We're going to play a tune that, depending on your loyalties, you would call it British Grenadiers, or you change the lyrics if you're an American and you call it Liberty Song. Same melody, different words. Yeah, AABB. Called Seven Stars, occasionally called Moon and Seven Stars. Twice through. Very briefly, so we mentioned the role of drums and fifes, sometimes called music, but usually called the drums, because music also, they had bands of music, and a band of music was more ornamental. They did not play communications. They were civilians hired by the officers for ceremony and for entertainment, and bands of music had very different instrumentation, but the everyday music heard by the soldiers would be the fifes and the drums for the most part. As such, because they are communications, they are paid a little bit more than the private soldiers, and they often are, their uniforms are usually distinct. So you'll notice that many of the British drums and fifes, almost all of us have some sort of ornamentation on our coats. The lace and the chevrons on the sleeves and so on made it a little bit more decorative. Only musicians would have that. Likewise, many of us reverse the colors of the coat. So my regiment, the 22nd Regiment, has a red coat with this buff colored facings. the drums and fifes, you see a few of us are wearing the opposite of that. It gets more complicated. The Royal Regiments did not reverse, so you do see some red coats as well. The 43rd Regiment in the back and the 71st, they're wearing white coats because, again, their regiments had white colored facings. In the American Army, wow, oh, we do have one, yay! This gentleman is a red coat, but he's not a British red coat. What regiment?
The 3rd Pennsylvania.
3rd Pennsylvania. So he's from Pennsylvania. And many soldiers in the American Army wore blue coats faced in red. You'll see that today when you see the reenactment. Not all, it's quite varied. So a regiment, the 3rd New Jersey, the 3rd Pennsylvania, other Pennsylvania regiments, and so on, Delaware, Maryland, many wore blue coats faced in red. The drums and fifes, red coats faced in blue. They could stand out. The officer could find them when they needed them to play those signals. Thank you for being here. Usually we have more. The other Americans are wearing another garment that was very common amongst the American Army. It's called a hunting frock. And that's the fringed linen overshirt that they're wearing. So a little bit about that's how we're dressed and so on. And the reason that we, by the way, I just want to point out something. This ensemble that you're seeing today, this is the first time that all of us as one unit have ever played together. And we didn't have, you know, some of us have gotten together separately, and we know, a lot of us know each other. The reason we can do that is we pretty much have standardized music. So we have some music books that have been published that we agree on certain versions of the tunes and so on. And that's why we're able to do this. So we're very happy to be able to do it, and I think it's coming together rather nicely. Okay, we'll play some more music, and I'll be quiet. Scott Grace? Yeah. Okay, this is a tune that, interestingly, is in American manuscripts and in one British manuscript called Scotch Gray's March. And this is one of the few marches that we actually have an authentic drumming for from the period. One stir?
Yeah,
Sorry about that. Okay. We haven't agreed on how many times we're playing it. By the way, that's another point. You'll notice we do not have a drum major in the front like modern British Army and American Army with a staff or a mace. We believe that came in after the Revolution, so the drum major was a performing drummer. So it does cause some confusion sometimes. Apologies. What's next? Welcome here again? Welcome here again, twice through. Welcome here again. Baltimore for the drum.
A-A-B-A.
A-A-B-B.
A-A-B-B.
A-A-B-B-A. So the next two. Sorry. That tune is called French Quick March in one manuscript written by an American Fife major, but there is evidence that it was originally a French tune under a very French name, which I don't recall. The British liked it, so they changed it to the Casino. And Nathaniel Brown changed it to French Quick March, and then by the 1800s, its name changed again and is now known today as Baltimore, which is the drum part that we played to it. Okay, we're going to play two more selections. The next tune is called York Fusiliers. It is also a uniquely American tune as far as our research has discovered. It's only in American sources. York Fusiliers. Final duty tune. This tune is called The Roast Beef of Old England, but most people cared that it had roast beef in it. Anyone have a thought of what it may have been used for? What would roast beef have signaled? Mealtime. So roast beef was signaled for the men to get their provisions. The men actually cooked their own meals, except perhaps the officers, but the common soldiers would cook together. They would get their flour, their beef, their salt pork, and so on. So we're going to play the roast beef because it's about to be our nooning hour, and that'll conclude our presentation. How do you start?
All right.
We're supposed to all play together. Right. Okay, Fife's up.